During this time of limited travel, increased isolation, and stressful media, we want to make the most of this time right here at home.
Let us be your escape from life's monotony. Allow yourself to indulge in your wildest travel fantasies and discover the constant beauty of this ever-changing world with the Wanderlusting Wives podcast. On today's episode, Allie is going to tell us all about her experience in Bolivia as part of a service learning trip.
Welcome to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast. We're your navigators, Allison
And Regan. And today we'll be diving into the culture and some adventures to be had in Bolivia. So we're not going to be in the United States. We're not going to be in Europe. We are going to be in South America, in Bolivia, through the lens of a service learning trip that Allie actually went on a few years back. So before we get into that, let's head off with our icebreaker. Allie, would you rather stay at a hotel or an Airbnb, and why?
Oh, this is a good one. So, probably like 5 or 6 years ago, I would have said hotel because Airbnb was somewhat new, and I'm like, God, that seems a little sketchy. But then after you just take that leap into the Airbnb world, I feel like there's no turning back. Like, it's just an unreal experience. You get to live in someone's home for a couple days, and sometimes they're even there, so you get to connect with someone who lives in that area. So that's really great, and you have the extra amenities of like a kitchen. Sometimes they have a backyard, maybe a hot tub or a pool, and that just kind of sets it apart from a hotel because you're not sharing all that stuff with maybe hundreds of other people. So that's kind of why I lean more towards Airbnb than hotel. How about you, Regan?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Like you said, and I know we've touched on this in our previous episodes, but you stay with an Airbnb and that comes with a host a lot of times. And so you can get to know them, and if they're from a different country or even from a different town or anything, you just get to know their stories because everyone has stories. And that's really special. And also, if you stay in a hotel, like think about it, you can get to some really beautiful places. Like you can stay right on the water or anything like that. There's some beautiful hotels, but hotels take up a lot of real estate. And so it's like this big area, and that's kind of it. Versus an Airbnb, you can get into those smaller areas. You can stay in tree houses. You can stay in yurts. You can stay in all of these different kinds of places that take you deeper into the environment, which I think is really cool, in tandem with that kind of getting to know people aspect of it. So yeah, I think I'd go with Airbnb also. All right, so moving right along, we have a really special interview for you planned with our very own Allie, Allison, as some might say, but I call her Allie because we go way back, of course, as you know. Um, so a little bit more about Allie. You've been getting to know us a little bit, but really to dive into her background a little bit more to kind of preface this episode and where we're coming from. So Allie is from a very small town in Western New York, but she currently lives in Pennsylvania. I wish she didn't. I wish she lived closer. But from a very young age, she began traveling the world and hasn't stopped since. She has a passion for travel and also for helping others. When she's not traveling or teaching, you can find her spending time with her husband, Nate, visiting family and friends, or reading a good book. Allie, what are you reading right now?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm reading the Hunger Games series again.
Yes! Oh my gosh, they're so good.
Yeah. I just finished the first one, so time for the second one.
Good. I just needed to know.
Yeah.
So in college, Allie went to Slippery Rock University, and she earned both her master's degree and undergrad degree from there. Her bachelor's is in early childhood education with a concentration in international education. And her master's degree is in TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages, which I would imagine has something to do with why Bolivia was of interest to her. So, as we mentioned right now, Allie is a second grade teacher in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. And fun facts about Allie, she has been to 21 countries, 4 continents, and 34 states and counting. So we're really excited to start interviewing Allie here about her trip to Bolivia. So I'll jump in with our first question. What made you choose to do a service learning project in Bolivia, and what was your process like to confirm that you were approved to go?
Yeah, so I wasn't even really like looking for this experience. It kind of just found me. So I was literally just going down the stairs of the education building one day and I saw a flyer on the wall. It said service learning project in Bolivia. I said, wow, that sounds really interesting. I really like to help people. I also like to travel and I haven't been to Bolivia before. So I quickly got the information down and researched more about it. And it seemed like a really great opportunity. So I applied for it. I had to submit an application and I was accepted. And in order to go on the trip, you had to have an updated passport and you had to also have certain vaccines. I can't remember which ones they were right now, but you had to have ones to even get in the country. Like this booklet that you had to show at customs before they let you in. So it wasn't like one of those things that like the CDC recommends you get this to travel here. It was you had to get this in order to get in the country. So plan accordingly because there were 2 shots that you needed to get, and you needed to get them a couple months ahead of time.
Can you like give us a little bit of an overview of that, of like how long you were there for, where you stayed, what your schedule was like, what were some of those projects you were involved in?
Yeah, so I was there for 2 weeks, and I had never been somewhere that long before, so that was a bit nerve-wracking. I've
Mhm.
only the longest I've ever been somewhere was 10 days, so 2 weeks was amazing, and I stayed with a host family, which absolutely terrified me before I went there. I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so shy. They're gonna speak Spanish. I only know very little." So I was kind of freaking out once I was at the airport. I'm like, "I cannot believe I'm doing this, but I really wanna do it, so I'm just gonna be a big girl and just do it." So I stayed with the host family for a majority of the time, and then there was a few times when we were actually building a school that we stayed in a hotel because it was outside of where I was staying. So I actually stayed in Cochabamba, Bolivia. That's a fun little name there.
Cochabamba,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I stayed in Cochabamba with the host family, and then we did stay in a hotel a couple of nights when we were doing a service learning project. But a typical day was early mornings, and it was myself and another student from the university staying with me. We had probably, I think, 10 people total. It was myself and another girl staying with this specific host family, and we would all have breakfast in the mornings. My host mom, Jeanette, she would cook us breakfast, and then we would get picked up by the bus and go to whatever site we were working on that day. And then we would be let go for lunch, whether that was with our group or they took us back home. Usually we went home because my host mom, Jeanette, and host dad, Miguel, were at home from work, and we were all having a big family lunch. And then we would go back to the work site, or we would have a meeting with the group to talk about what we're going to be doing for the rest of the day or the next day. And then we would either have dinner with the group or the host family. But most times it was with our host family. And when I say host family, I don't just mean my mom, dad, and one of my host brothers. I also mean like aunts, uncles, cousins. It was a
Extended
huge,
family.
yes, it was a really big deal. So we would always have dinner together, accompanied by tea. There was always tea with dinner, and usually some kind of meat and sometimes rice or other vegetables in the meal. So definitely had an amazing experience with my host family. It was incredible, and I didn't think I was going to get as close with them as I did, but I ended up bawling my eyes out when I had to leave them. It was such a great experience.
So are you still connected with your host family now, like, at all?
Yeah, so we're friends on Facebook and occasionally talk back and forth. And we have to also get a visa. I forgot to mention that in the beginning, but you had to get a visa to go there, and mine's good for 10 years. So I still have, I think, 6 more years left on my visa. So I would like to go back and visit them, hopefully, when it's safer to do so.
That's just it's so cool that you now have, like, a Bolivian family to that's always gonna be there. That's really cool. Yeah, you mentioned, the family. So were there any other connections that you made with local people or specific memories that you remember with the people?
Yeah, so when we were doing the service learning projects, one of them was to build a school, as I'd previously mentioned, and we were working with the locals. So the families that were going to be benefited from this school, they were actually there helping us build the school right alongside of us.
Oh,
So
my heart.
yeah, like we're just mixing cement with the mothers of the children who are going to be attending this school. The fathers are helping us lay the brick wall, and it was just such an incredible experience. Like, I just remember distinctly talking to one of the builders, and he was like in charge of the whole project, and he knew very, very, very little English. So I had to speak to him in Spanish, and I was panicking because we're building a wall here. Like, this is not a joke. This is like kids are going to be inside of this wall. So I had to quickly learn some construction words in Spanish. Don't ask me what they are now because I can't remember, but um I was able to learn some Spanish, and he ended up saying like, "Wow, your Spanish is really good," which I was like, "I just learned these words like 2 seconds ago." But that was a very cool experience to, work with the families who are going to be benefited directly from this school. And when we left, they gave us this huge celebration. They cooked us a local dish, and they sprinkled confetti on our heads and gave us little gifts as like a thank you. So that was an incredible experience. And then we also helped at a bird sanctuary. There was more than just birds, but it was mostly birds. And they hosted us there and gave us lunch and just really took the time to get to know us and our culture, as well as us learning more about their culture. So those service learning projects gave us a chance to connect with the locals and hear more of their story, which was incredible because you don't get that with, a touristy experience.
That kind of brings me to a question of how does the Bolivian culture differ from United States culture?
So if you listened to last week's episode, or 2 weeks ago, probably now, with Jules, she talked about, a slower pace of life. People really, get to enjoy their life. It's not go, go, go like here in the States. So same kind of thing in Bolivia. It's very slow, extremely family oriented. So while I was there, unfortunately, my host mother's father was very sick, and he was staying in the home, and they were taking care of him. So the family, like from aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone was there every day helping to take care of him. They were taking turns with shifts, making food. So not that you don't see that here in the US, but you're not always going to see aunt, uncle, cousin at the house every single day, and just putting such an emphasis on family and spending time completely just engaged in dinner conversations, whether I knew what they were saying most of the time or not. They tried to translate whatever they could so that I could be a part of that conversation. I think that was, really extraordinary that they even thought to include me. Not that they were, going to be rude about it, but they didn't know English as well, and I didn't know Spanish as well. So we just kind of took the time to use as little language as we had to connect with one another. And I think sometimes that's not really the case here in the US. It's kind of like, well, you don't speak English, I'm not going to talk to you, kind of thing. So it was nice that they were patient and willing to help me learn.
That's really beautiful. So, I guess that's a good segue into a question like what was it like to be immersed in the language and to be kind of on the outside of the language?
Honestly, at first it was terrifying because how it worked, like once we had gotten to Bolivia, we had gotten into the bus that we were going to be using throughout the week. And the girl that I was going to be with staying at this family, they were like, "Oh, we're dropping you guys off first." I was like, "Oh no, like I'm not ready yet." I'm still kind of panicking because I don't really know much Spanish. I've been here for like maybe 4 hours. So as soon as we walk in the door, they start speaking Spanish, and I probably looked like a deer in headlights. I cannot imagine the look on my face, but I just like knew like "Hola, cómo estás?" and then that was pretty much the extent of like that conversation at first. And then we started to realize like, okay, there's going to be a language barrier here, but like I said, they take the time to help me out, and I helped them learn English. And I just remember this one conversation at dinner, and I don't even remember what my host mother asked me, but somehow was trying to say that I was hungry, and instead I said I'm a man because hungry and man are similar words in Spanish. So just like that, it was just something that I felt sometimes kind of tense trying to say the right words, but we were able to just laugh and realize, like we're humans, we're going to make mistakes. We're both trying to learn each other's languages, and it was challenging, but I also left like learning so many words. And when I came back, I felt myself like having to realize I don't need to use my Spanish anymore. I wanted to respond to people in Spanish, but I was like, wait, I can use English again. So it was almost like it became second nature. My brain kind of switched over to Spanish, but it was awesome. It kind of gave me a better idea of what my future students might be experiencing, because I do have that degree in TESOL, which is teaching English to speakers of other languages. And it made me realize like these kids are coming not knowing English sometimes, and that's terrifying to them. People are just talking a mile a minute at them, and they're absolutely terrified. And that was kind of how I felt. So it was nice to kind of get a glimpse of what my future students might be experiencing, and taking away that I just need to be patient with them and we can connect even though we might not speak the same language.
I love that. I You just said that so beautifully. I'm like, my heart is warm and fuzzy right now listening to you say this, because it is something that's like, language can be a barrier, and it's how we respond and are humbled by it too. Yeah, that's awesome. And so you've talked a lot about, I mean, some really great memories that you have. Are there any other memories that you haven't touched on yet that you carry with you?
Yeah, so like I talked about, the dinners was something that was really nice. Actually, I was there for my 20th birthday, and that was my first birthday ever away from my family, and I was in a completely other country. And they took the time to make me a little cake. They sang happy birthday to me. And that was just like the sweetest thing ever, because I was worried, like, I didn't want to, make the day about me. I wasn't sure how they handled birthdays and stuff like that. So I didn't even really tell them it was my birthday until like the day before. I was like, hey, my birthday's tomorrow. Um, so that was extremely nice. And then I also, I think it was the last day or 2 days before the last day, there was actually a protest happening in Cochabamba, and it was the most intriguing thing I've experienced. It was so peaceful, and usually you don't really see that. The city was protesting um, the government, and they weren't agreeing with how they were handling things. So the city completely shut down, and everyone had the day off. So we got to spend time with my host parents and myself and the other girl I was with, and Paulo, our host brother, took us around, and we just walked around the community. And it like almost brought me to tears, because it was just so beautiful to see everyone coming together. No one was arguing, no one was being completely outrageous. They just had cars blocking the road, they had some signs up. I didn't know what they said. They were in Spanish, but they were protesting, and it was so peaceful. The only thing that was like loud about it was they had firecrackers going off. So at first I was like, "Oh my gosh, these are gunshots!" But they were not that. It was just firecrackers. They were just having fun. But they had a day off and they just came together, and it was so moving to see that like a country can come together, completely shut down the city, and no one was arrested. They were so peaceful about it, and that was just a really touching experience.
Yeah, again, I will say, just as we said when we interviewed Jules about Italy, there's something to learn from other countries, which
Yeah,
is
definitely.
which is really cool. So those are some memories. Like, what are some adventures on a small scale or large scale that you got to partake in on your days off from your service learning projects?
Yeah, so we only had a couple of days off because, the main purpose was to do these service learning projects and give back to the community. But when we did have time off, I had the really unique experience of going to a baptism. And if you're from America, you know how big like first birthdays can be for a child. Well, take that and do it like times 15, because this
Mhm.
baptism celebration was unreal. Like I had never seen such a huge celebration before for like this little tiny baby. And there was like gifts, huge tents, like catered, and it was insane. And somehow, if you know me, you're gonna be like, no way you did this. But somehow, picky me tried cow tongue, ate the whole
Oh.
thing. Mind you, this cow tongue literally is like a tongue sitting on the plate. It's not disguised as any other meat. It's just a cow tongue. And I ate the whole thing. It just tasted kind of like roast beef almost. So yeah, I know you're absolutely shocked. Regan
Oh my
knows me, and
gosh.
I wouldn't eat like anything besides chicken nuggets, but I did
Yes.
try cow tongue. I also had the chance to go to a market with my host dad, Miguel, and it was so cool. They just had like fresh fruits and vegetables. It even had like clothes and other like random household stuff that you might want there. But it was really neat to just walk down these stalls and get to experience, how locals shop for their fresh produce. So that was really unique.
Mm.
And I didn't really get to spend as much time with my host father because he was working a lot. He owns his own company. So it was nice to get that one on one time with him as well as the other girl that was staying with us. And then my host brother had the chance to take us to a light and water show because it was around Christmas time. I had gone at January, so they still had some like Christmas stuff up. So we just walked around this park that had cool water fountains and light shows going. And then probably one of the most amazing experiences that I had was going to church with my host family. So it was a Catholic church, and it was completely in Spanish. They gave me this like newspaper. I guess it was probably like the program. Again, don't know because it was all in Spanish. So I was like trying to follow along and like pick out words that I knew. It was very hard, but it was also very, very cool to experience, how other cultures go about their Sundays, going to church, what they do after church. And if you get the chance to do that, I highly recommend, whether you're religious or not, just going and experiencing a church in another language, in another country, because it's unlike anything I've been able to experience before.
Yeah, and religion is such a huge part of so many cultures that I feel like I really want to go and do that. That would be just so unique and so immersive and probably very beautiful. Yeah. So that kind of gives us a really good sense of your time there and your memories, and it sounds like you had an amazing time. All in all, how would you summarize the impact that this trip had on your life now that you're back here in the United States?
Yeah, so to give you a little context, at the point that I had went on this trip, I had been able to start my master's degree when I was doing my undergrad. So I had been maybe one semester in, and I thought, I think I want to do TESOL, get a degree in TESOL, and I think I want to, work with students whose first language is not English, but I was still trying to figure it out. But after this trip, it really like solidified that this is what I want to be doing, and I think this is how I'm going to be able to make an impact in my local community. I don't have that job right now, but I'm, have a goal of teaching TESOL eventually because I just realized, we can be patient with other people. We can give them a chance. Just because they're not from our culture, they don't speak our language, does not mean they're lesser than us. And I think those people often get a bad rap. And I think they need the chance to start fresh and have an opportunity to be successful here. And I think this trip just really showed me that just because I don't speak the same language as someone doesn't mean I can't build a connection with them. And I think it just solidified that I really am passionate about TESOL and teaching, and I really want to make an impact with people and connect with people from different cultures. And it just gave me an appreciation for the life that I do have here. Bolivia, isn't super poor in the part that I was in, but it just gives you an appreciation for the little things. Like they had to boil the water for us to drink every day. Whereas here, I can just go up to my fridge and get out the ice and water and drink straight from without even thinking of it. So puts into perspective, how great we do have it here and just give me a better appreciation for everything in life, really.
I feel like that is a wonderful way to wrap up. Allie, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I know I feel inspired, and I hope all of our listeners feel inspired. So thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you for giving me the chance to share this experience and kind of have a different, perspective on South America because sometimes it does get a bad rap. So I'm happy to shed some light on that and share my experience.
Thanks for tuning in to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast. Come escape with us again next Tuesday morning. Give us a subscribe and a follow on all of our social media and wherever you listen to your podcasts. And until we chat next week, wander on.